What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Multiverse of Mayhem. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most influential chapters in Star Wars lore, Knights of the Old Republic. This tale is set thousands of years before the Skywalker Saga, yet continues to shape the franchise we know and love today. Part 1, The Ancient Galaxy. Knights of the Old Republic, aka KOTOR, takes us back nearly 4,000 years before the events of A New Hope, or what is also referred to as 0 BBY. This is an era when both the Jedi Order and the Sith were at the height of their powers. This isn't the galaxy of Imperial stormtroopers or Trade Federation droids. This is Star Wars at its most mythic. The technology of this era reflects this ancient setting. While hyperspace travel, lightsabers, and blasters all exist, they often have a more primitive, rugged aesthetic. Ships like the Ebon Hawk, KOTOR's answer to the Millennium Falcon, feature designs that clearly influenced what would come thousands of years later, showing how Star Wars visuals have deep in-universe histories. The political landscape of this time was vastly different from what we see in the films. The Old Republic was at its territorial peak, spanning much of the known galaxy, with the Senate housed in a less ornate version of the Coruscant buildings we see in the prequels. The Jedi, rather than the small, secretive group of the original trilogy or the politically entangled diplomats of the prequels, were a vast organization with multiple training academies spread across different worlds. The Jedi of this era weren't just legendary peacekeepers, but a vast army of Force wielders. They operated with greater autonomy and held more diverse philosophies about the Force. The Dantooine Jedi Enclave, featured prominently in KOTOR, represents a different architectural and philosophical approach than the Coruscant Temple of the prequel era, more connected to nature, less centralized, but still guided by a council of masters. Meanwhile, the Sith were not operating under the rule of two that would later define them in the films. Instead, they functioned as a full-fledged empire with their own academies, hierarchies, and power structures. The Sith Academy on Korriban, where acolytes compete in deadly trials to prove their worth, shows how the dark side was cultivated on an institutional level. The timeline of KOTOR centers around two major conflicts, the Mandalorian Wars and the Jedi Civil War, events that would reshape galactic politics for millennia to come. To truly understand these wars, we need to appreciate the Mandalorian culture of this period. Unlike the scattered tribes we see in the Mandalorian series, the ancient Mandalorians were united under a single leader and driven by a warrior ethos that valued combat as the highest form of expression. The Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders, led by Mandalore the Ultimate, launched a massive campaign of conquest, systematically defeating Republic forces across the Outer Rim. Their distinctive armor and combat tactics made them nearly unstoppable, and their willingness to adopt the technologies and strategies of conquered peoples allowed them to continuously evolve their warfare capabilities. This Mandalorian onslaught forced the Jedi Order into a difficult position. The Jedi Council, cautious after previous conflicts, advocated restraint and meditation, sensing a darker threat lurking behind the Mandalorian aggression. But many younger Jedi saw this as indifference to suffering, creating a schism within the Order that would have far-reaching consequences. This moral dilemma led to the rise of Revan and Malak, two charismatic and powerful Jedi who defied the Council to lead Republic forces against the Mandalorians. Their tactical brilliance turned the tide of the war, culminating in the devastating Battle of Malachor V, where Revan defeated Mandalore the Ultimate in single combat, and a superweapon shattered both the planet and the Mandalorian forces. But this victory came at a terrible cost. The horrors of war and the tactical necessities of leadership led Revan and Malak down a dark path. After defeating the Mandalorians, they took the remainder of their fleet into the unknown regions, supposedly to hunt down surviving enemies. What they found instead was the ancient Sith Empire, which had been hiding and rebuilding in the shadows for centuries. When they returned to Republic space, they were no longer Jedi, but Sith Lords commanding a massive armada of warships, many converted from Republic vessels that had followed them loyally during the Mandalorian Wars. The betrayal from within nearly destroyed both the Republic and the Jedi Order, a pattern of internal conflict and betrayal that would repeat throughout Star Wars history. from Anakin's fall to Kylo Ren's betrayal of Luke. The worlds of KOTOR each tell part of this complex history. Taris, with its rigid class structure dividing the wealthy from the impoverished undercity dwellers. Dantooine, where the pastoral landscape hides ancient mysteries. Korriban, the ancestral homeworld of the Sith, where dark side energy permeates the very soil. Manaan, the oceanic world of the neutrality-obsessed Selkath. Kashyyyk, where Wookiees battle the dangers of their stratified forest. And Tatooine, the desert planet whose harsh environment has remained unchanged for millennia. Part 2, the legendary characters. KOTOR introduced us to some of the most compelling characters in Star Wars lore, individuals whose legacy would echo across millennia of galactic history. Let's dive deeper into these iconic figures who defined not just a game, but an entire era of the Star Wars universe. At the center of it all stands Revan, perhaps the most complex figure in the entire franchise, a brilliant military strategist, an incredibly powerful Force user who walked both paths of the Force. Revan defies easy categorization. As a Jedi, Revan was charismatic and decisive, inspiring legions of followers. As a Sith Lord, Revan was calculating and pragmatic, conquering with precision rather than cruelty, a stark contrast to most Sith we've seen who tend to rule through fear and brutality. What made Revan's approach to the dark side particularly unique was its philosophical nature. Unlike Sith Lords who fell due to personal trauma or emotional weakness, Revan's embrace of the dark side was almost intellectual, a calculated decision born from seeing the Republic's weakness and the Jedi's inaction. This makes Revan one of the most fascinating villains in the franchise, someone who chose evil not out of hatred or fear, but out of a warped sense of necessity. Revan's iconic mask and robes have become symbols in their own right. The mask, taken from a fallen Mandalorian warrior, was originally worn as a psychological tactic against the Mandalorians who respected strength above all else. But it evolved into something more, a symbol that transcended the individual beneath it, allowing Revan to become a living legend. This transformation from person to symbol parallels the journey of Darth Vader thousands of years later, showing how Star Wars continually echoes its own themes across different eras. But what truly makes Revan unique in gaming history is that his identity was yours to discover through gameplay. The shocking revelation that your customizable protagonist was actually the amnesiac Dark Lord of the Sith was a masterclass in video game storytelling that still ranks among the greatest plot twists in gaming history. This narrative device allowed players to experience Revan's redemption arc firsthand, making the philosophical questions about identity, redemption, and the nature of good and evil deeply personal. Standing beside Revan, we find Bastila Shan, a character who represents the Jedi ideals but struggles with her own pride and temptation. Her rare gift of battle meditation, the ability to influence the outcome of entire battles through the Force, made her not just a powerful Jedi, but a critical military asset. This unique Force ability showed how the Star Wars universe could expand beyond the telekinesis and lightning we commonly see, giving us Force powers that operate on a strategic rather than tactical level. Bastila's internal conflict between duty and emotion, between Jedi stoicism and human connection, creates one of the most compelling character arcs in the game. Her fall to the dark side and potential redemption, depending on player choices, illustrates how thin the line between light and dark can be for even the most dedicated Jedi. Her legacy would continue to impact the galaxy for generations, with her descendant Bastila Shan becoming Grand Master of the Jedi Order during the later Great Galactic War, establishing one of the few direct family lineages we see spanning across different eras of Star Wars storytelling. The crew of the Ebon Hawk provided a diverse cast that expanded our understanding of the Star Wars universe. Mission Vao and Zalbar showed us the underbelly of galactic society, those who survive on the margins. Canderous Ordo gave us insight into Mandalorian culture and honor that would later be expanded in contemporary Star Wars media. And then there's HK-47, the assassin droid whose darkly comic perspective became instantly iconic, with his cheerful references to organic beings as meatbags and enthusiastic descriptions of assassination techniques. HK-47 brought a unique form of humor to Star Wars that balanced the game's otherwise serious tone. The term meatbag would become so iconic that it was canonized in-universe when Darth Malak found it so amusing that he adopted it himself. HK-47's perspective on organic life and his peculiar brand of logic made him one of gaming's most memorable AI characters, preceding similar beloved synthetic characters in other franchises. The elderly Jedi Jolee Bindo represented a gray approach to the Force that was revolutionary for Star Wars at the time. Neither fully committed to the Jedi Code nor fallen to the dark side, Jolee operated in the moral complexity of the real world rather than the often black and white morality of Star Wars. His pragmatic wisdom and rejection of Jedi dogma foreshadowed characters like Ahsoka Tano, who would later walk their own paths between the rigid structures of Jedi and Sith. In many ways, Jolee represented what Luke Skywalker would eventually become in the sequel trilogy, a disillusioned Jedi who recognized the flaws in the Order's teachings. Cartho Nasi, the Republic soldier with trust issues stemming from betrayal, represented the ordinary soldiers caught in these Force user conflicts. His perspective grounds the cosmic scale of Force battles in the human impact of war and betrayal, a theme that would continue throughout Star Wars storytelling. Antagonizing our heroes stands Darth Malak, who embodied the corruption of power in its purest form. Once a noble Jedi Knight and Revan's closest friend, he gradually became consumed by ambition and cruelty through the course of the Mandalorian Wars. His betrayal of Revan, firing upon his master's ship when they were still allies, showed the ultimate Sith truth that Palpatine would later express to Anakin: the apprentice always seeks to overthrow the master. Malak's distinctive appearance, towering height, and metal prosthetic jaw created a visual representation of how the dark side had consumed and replaced his humanity piece by piece. Together, these characters created a rich tapestry that expanded what Star Wars could be, introducing complex moral questions and relationships that would influence not just games, but the broader Star Wars universe for decades to come. They showed that Star Wars storytelling could thrive in eras completely disconnected from the Skywalker Saga, with themes that resonated across millennia of in-universe history. Part 3, The Eternal Conflict. At its heart, KOTOR explores the eternal conflict between Jedi and Sith in its most primal form, but unlike the films, which often present this as a straightforward battle between good and evil, KOTOR delves into the philosophical underpinnings that drive this ancient feud, asking deeper questions about what the Force truly represents and how its different aspects shape those who wield it. The game takes us to Korriban, the ancient Sith homeworld, a harsh desert planet whose red sands conceal the tombs of legendary Dark Lords. Here, among the ghosts of Ajunta Pal, Tulak Horde, Marka Ragnos, and Naga Sato, we confront the purest expressions of Sith philosophy. These tombs aren't just challenging dungeons, they're windows into different aspects of the Sith ethos, each testing the player in ways that reflect the particular Dark Lord's approach to power. The Valley of the Dark Lords on Korriban represents something we never truly got to see in the films, a Sith culture with its own history, traditions, and philosophy, rather than just isolated villains. The Sith Academy perched above these ancient tombs shows how dark side knowledge was systematically cultivated and passed down through generations, creating a dark mirror to the Jedi Order. Here, acolytes scheme against each other in deadly competition, embodying the Sith belief that strength comes through conflict. KOTOR introduced the Sith Code to Star Wars lore, a direct counterpoint to the Jedi Code we'd previously only glimpsed. This formal codification of Sith beliefs has become a cornerstone of expanded universe storytelling. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. This philosophy centers on individual empowerment through emotion, a direct rejection of the Jedi approach of detachment and selflessness. Where the Jedi seek to subdue the self, the Sith exalt it. Where Jedi view emotion as dangerous, Sith harness it as fuel. This creates not just a moral conflict, but a fundamental disagreement about the nature of existence and how beings should relate to the universe around them. The Sith Code stands in stark contrast to the Jedi Code. There is no emotion, there is peace, there is no ignorance, there is knowledge, there is no passion, there is serenity, there is no chaos, there is harmony, there is no death, there is the Force. What makes KOTOR's approach to this conflict so compelling is that it doesn't simply present the Jedi as unquestionably right. Through characters like Jolee Bindo, the game suggests that the Jedi's extreme emotional detachment and rigid hierarchies may create their own problems. The player encounters former Jedi who left the Order not because they were tempted by the dark side, but because they found the Jedi path too limiting or dogmatic. This nuanced approach reaches its zenith in KOTOR's sequel, The Sith Lords, through the character of Kreia, a disillusioned former Jedi and Sith who questions the fundamental assumptions of both orders. Her character takes the philosophical exploration to its logical conclusion by proposing that the Force itself might be a malevolent influence manipulating all life, using both Jedi and Sith as pawns in an incomprehensible cosmic game. This idea that the Force might not be benevolent was revolutionary in Star Wars storytelling and echoes in works like The Last Jedi's more critical examination of the Jedi legacy. The depth of this philosophical conflict is further expressed through the game's morality system. Unlike many other games with good and evil paths, KOTOR's light side and dark side choices often present complex moral dilemmas without easy answers. Dark side options aren't always just about being cruel. Sometimes they represent pragmatism, efficiency, or even necessary harshness. Light side choices can sometimes seem naive or ineffective in the face of real threats. This moral complexity forces players to truly consider what it means to follow either path rather than simply choosing between cartoon heroism and villainy. Beyond philosophy, KOTOR introduces elements that would become recurring motifs throughout Star Wars storytelling. The ancient Rakata are one of the most important additions, a once mighty species whose vast, infinite empire dominated the galaxy 30,000 years before the films, only to collapse due to their own corruption and loss of connection to the Force. Their legacy of advanced technology, including the Starforge superweapon, established a pattern that would repeat throughout Star Wars: the discovery of lost knowledge or technology that could shift the balance of power. The Starforge itself deserves special attention, a massive space station that drew energy directly from a star to mass-produce war materials, creating unlimited fleets for its masters. This concept of ancient superweapons waiting to be rediscovered became a recurring theme in Star Wars. From the Death Star plans to Starkiller Base to the Sith Eternal Fleet on Exegol, the threat of overwhelming destructive power has remained constant. But the Starforge went beyond mere destruction. It was almost alive, corrupting its users through the dark side while fulfilling their desires, representing the seductive nature of power itself. The Mandalorians, though already established in expanded universe materials before KOTOR, were given new depth through the game's exploration of their warrior culture. Their concept of battle as a path to glory and cultural identity, regardless of species, laid groundwork that would later be expanded in the Clone Wars, Rebels, and most significantly, the Mandalorian series. The distinctive T-visored helmets that have become so iconic in modern Star Wars had their origins in designs that KOTOR helped popularize and develop. Honestly, did you have any idea that Star Wars had such a rich, deep history of context? Even the nature of the Force itself was expanded in KOTOR, with new expressions of Force powers and philosophies, Force bonds, connections that link individuals through the Force in profound ways, were introduced in KOTOR long before they became central to the sequel trilogy's connection between Rey and Kylo Ren. Battle meditation showed how the Force could be used to influence large-scale conflicts, not just individual confrontations. These expansions helped develop the Force from a somewhat limited power set in the original films to the more diverse and nuanced energy field of modern Star Wars. Part 4, Legacy Across Media. The impact of Knights of the Old Republic extends far beyond the original games. The story continued in the online multiplayer game, Star Wars The Old Republic, which explored the aftermath of Revan's tale and introduced new conflicts like the Great Galactic War. In comics, the Tales of the Jedi and Knights of the Old Republic series expanded this era, giving us deeper insights into characters like Ulic Qel-Droma and Nomi Sunrider, whose lightsaber techniques would be passed down through generations of Jedi. Though KOTOR's specific storylines were relegated to legend status when Disney acquired Lucasfilm, elements have steadily been reincorporated into canon. Darth Bane, mentioned in KOTOR, was confirmed canonical in the Clone Wars series. The Mandalorian Neo-Crusader's distinctive armor influenced designs in the Mandalorian series. The ancient Sith Lord Darth Revan himself was briefly canonized in the Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary, which mentioned a Sith Trooper Legion named after him. While this reference was minimal, it officially brought one of the era's most important figures back into canon. In animation, we've seen the distinctive designs of Old Republic-era ships and armor-influenced shows like Star Wars Rebels, particularly in episodes dealing with ancient Sith, artifacts, and temples. Part 5, The Future of KOTOR. The legacy of Knights of the Old Republic isn't just historical, it's actively shaping the future of Star Wars storytelling. The KOTOR remake, originally announced at the PlayStation Showcase in 2021, has had quite a turbulent development journey. In March 2025, Saber Interactive confirmed that the game is still in development. Industry reports have suggested that fans shouldn't expect the game before 2025 at the earliest, with some developers believing it could take even longer. Despite these challenges, the continued commitment to the remake demonstrates just how much Lucasfilm values this beloved era of Star Wars history. As recently as March 2025, Saber Interactive executives have reassured fans that the project is still alive and well, though concrete details remain scarce. Beyond the remake, fans continue to hope for live-action adaptations set in the Old Republic era. The show The Acolyte, set in the High Republic era, took a swing at showing stories from earlier periods of the Star Wars timeline, yet was canceled due to a number of reasons, including poor ratings and fan criticism of the storytelling and writing. One consistent element of fan enthusiasm has been the overwhelming support for Keanu Reeves as the perfect choice to portray Revan. Fans have noted how Revan's appearance is reminiscent of Reeves, and the star's combination of physical presence, martial arts experience, and ability to project both heroism and moral ambiguity make him an ideal candidate to bring this complex character to life. While no official information on where or when Reeves could appear in the Star Wars universe has been made public, reports suggest Lucasfilm remains high on the actor, whose interest has been noted internally. Reeves was reportedly in contention for a role in The Acolyte before scheduling conflicts prevented his participation, further indicating Disney and Lucasfilm's interest in bringing him into the franchise. In conclusion, the legacy of Knights of the Old Republic isn't just about nostalgia, it's about the foundation it laid for what Star Wars could be. It proved that stories set thousands of years before the films could be just as compelling, that morally complex characters could exist in this universe, and that the mythology of the Force could be explored in deeper, more philosophical ways. Whether through the upcoming remake, potential live-action adaptations, or its continuing influence on all Star Wars media, KOTOR remains an essential chapter in the saga. Its echoes continue to shape the galaxy far, far away, proving that sometimes the most important history is ancient history. This has been Multiverse of Mayhem. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and as always, may the Force be with you.